Okay. So what I accidentally did, Mike, I accidentally hit this button right here.
Okay, so don't do that.
That was mute. It says mute on it, and I'm assuming we don't want that.
We don't want mute.
The sound was way better last time,
Oh, good.
and you had that really close to you.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
So I think we got to keep that up.
Okay. Testing. Oh, yeah. I can. Yeah, I'm
You
good.
can tell. So we kind of had all these tangents. We're going to review mycotoxins for a bit at the beginning.
We can review it, but let's mainly just say
You want to touch
I
on
wanted
that?
to tell you what my theory is on why mycotoxins are blamed when we rely on a traditional mold test, an air quality test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll go into the downfalls of traditional remediation. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Oh, gotta get my headphones on
Mhm.
here. Hello.
I don't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Well, I can hear you. I'm
But not in the...
not in here.
Oh, really? Should I go closer? Is that
Maybe.
better?
Yeah.
Can you hear me better now?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I can hear me.
I got nothing.
Really?
Mm.
Can you hear you?
I can hear me. Yeah. Through the headphones. Yeah, I can hear that.
I can hear that too.
I can't hear that.
Oh, really?
Wait, did you unpush mute?
Yeah.
About volume? That's probably a really dangerous thing to do.
You can't hear me at all through this, huh?
Huh.
Yeah, I can hear it loud and clear.
Oh, can you? Oh, well, we're fine then. Maybe it's just me.
Well, you got to be able to hear me while we're talking.
Oh, I can hear you just fine. I just can't hear you coming through here.
Isn't that better though for you? I think it's better. Let's
Probably.
take 1 minute at least, see if we...
I just really enjoy these headphones, Jer. I wish I could have life like this.
I don't know, what would it be, Mike? I don't know.
Oh, you know, just... I didn't just turn it off, did I?
Oh.
No, we're okay.
Oh.
I hit mute accidentally.
Maybe I need it. No, that's mute. Okay. You off. Okay.
Okay, I can hear me really well.
But you can't hear me.
Okay.
Well, darn.
You
You think we're...
I think we're okay.
You'll be able to hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
I think it'll
amplified.
record fine. I think it's easier for me when I hear you through the headphones, so...
Yeah. Oh.
Anyways, all right. Let's
Okay.
get started.
All right. This episode brought to you by Apple.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Red Bull.
No, Apple Computer.
That's true, huh? We need Brandon to get a Pure Maintenance
Did I
sticker.
do this?
We'll just be... Because we got the Pure Maintenance shirts on, you know?
Yeah.
We won't mention dry fog. We just drop
Right.
subtle hints the whole
Subtle
time.
hints, yeah. Yeah. But it's
All
foggy last night. Did you get fog over your house? It was weird. It was a dry fog.
Yeah. Didn't feel anything. I just couldn't see. All right, now they disappeared.
That's okay though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
it's fine. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Mold Matters podcast. This is episode 4 with Jeremy Evans and
I am Mike Adams.
Michael Blair Adams. We're glad to be back with you. It's been 2 weeks. Just a reminder, this podcast is where Mike and I discuss all things mold. As much as we can think of. We draw from research. We draw from largely from personal experience. Lots of trial and error. Lots of being inside people's homes.
Thousands of customers.
Yeah, thousands of houses, and I think the science is great too, and that informs a lot of what we do. But I think honestly, a lot of the most value that we can offer comes from being in homes.
I agree.
doing a treatment,
Yeah.
coming back later and have the customer say, "Well, I'm still feeling sick," or
I can still smell something.
I can still smell something,
up,
or something's off, and then tinkering with it, and then combining that with what we already know in science about mold and mold spores, and I think that's where a lot of the value we can offer comes from. Most of your experience, Mike. I always say that. So anyways, just to recap, we talked about mycotoxins last time, and we didn't get through nearly as much material as we wanted to, but we did kind of do a nice introduction to mycotoxins. And of course, after you do a podcast about mycotoxins, it's on your mind for the next week or two. Mm-hmm. And you sent me a couple of texts, or at least one, where you had another insight. And then just before this podcast, we were talking about mycotoxins, and you had another insight. And so before we get into today's topic, I'd like to, and it fits well with everything we've said, I'd like you to share, Mike, about this little insight you've had about mycotoxins, because I think you're spot on.
Well, it's actually, let me start with, and I meant to say this in the podcast last time, but I just got sidetracked. I do have a theory that a lot of times traditional mold people, even mold doctors to a certain extent, do not understand how bad mold testing is. It's terrible.
We addressed that 2 podcasts ago, the downfalls of all the testing.
And so I believe this. I believe that a lot of times what happens is somebody will have traditional mold remediation accomplished, and the test will show the home is clean. Well, the patient takes that report to the doctor, says, "Doc, they say my house doesn't have any spores floating around anymore. I'm still good, but why do I still feel terrible?" I think it's an easy, not an out for a doctor, but it's easy for them to just say, well, it could be the mycotoxins. They didn't do anything for the mycotoxins. Where I believe that 9 times out of 10, there's still mold in that house, and I don't think it's just the mycotoxins. There still is mold in that house. They got a clean report, but we all know reports are terrible. So I think that's an important thing to realize. Mycotoxins are very, very tough to test, and so it's an easy out when you're trying to explain, well, why do I still feel crappy when I just had mold remediation?
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. And I just shared with you, but just last week I took an air test in front of some mold again. Yeah, and it came back according to how we measure healthy mold levels, and from my experience, we have a very high standard of mold spore counts in homes. It has to be very low to be considered good for us, and it was even within that range, and it was right in front of a patch of fresh mold.
Fresh mold, yeah.
And so, I just think I can see how people don't understand the downfalls of mold testing. They see a clean air test, and just like you said, well, there's no mold spores in my house, so it must be the mycotoxins that are floating around. Yeah. Whereas I could take a mold test tomorrow in that house and maybe have some crazy high numbers.
Yeah, you could have taken one a few hours from when you took it, and you're going to have crazy different numbers.
Yeah, so that's a great thought.
Yeah, really, really inconsistent. And so the other thought I had was, it dawned on me, a lot of times people say, well, you got rid of the mold, but the mycotoxins are still there. You got to do something about the mycotoxins. Well, back to what I believe, what I said before, I still think there's still a lot of mold in that home. If there's a lot of mycotoxins, I believe there's still a lot of mold. But I started thinking about the mycotoxin thing, where we had talked about a little bit, that a lot of times if you truly do get rid of all the mold in your home, the mycotoxins will disperse into just the mixture of the air. There's a term out there called the solution to pollution is dilution. So I believe that happens a lot, that the mycotoxins will just disperse, but you got to take care of the mold problem. But it dawned on me the other day, I was at my daughter's house in St. Louis, and they had a gas leak. And they came out and fixed the gas leak. But I thought to myself, where are the people saying, you fix the leak, but you still have gas in that house. What are we going to do about that?
Yeah.
You know, and methane has got to be not great for you to breathe in all the time. So I think there's some good, just common sense logic of the dilution by mixing in the fresh air.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, when someone has a gas leak, they get it fixed. They're not complaining about the residual gas that was in the house.
Right. Or they may, but there certainly aren't health care practitioners saying you still have methane floating around in your house.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone gets the leak fixed and then opens the doors and windows for 15, 20 minutes.
Exactly.
And then they're good.
Right.
So
So I'm not trying to diminish the importance or the dangers of mycotoxins at all.
Yeah.
But I am saying that if you still have high levels of mycotoxins in your home, I believe you still have mold somewhere in the home.
Yeah. If you have mycotoxins, you have mold.
Yeah.
And it very well could be that air test you took, there's still mold in the home. You took the air test, and maybe you're right. There are mycotoxins because that test wasn't very accurate.
Right. Yeah.
So, those are very, very valid points. And we plan to revisit mycotoxins again. I think, obviously, that's a really important topic. As you talked about last time, that's often what makes people feel really, really sick. I like to share fresh examples from my work. I'm out in people's homes every day, and just last week, a guy was getting major headaches. He even had a test 4 years ago, came back normal. He explained some leaks and things that had happened years ago in his house. We did a treatment. I did a before test and then a treatment just last week. Before test showed 13 counts of Stachybotrys just on a very imperfect air test.
Right. Yeah.
If it catches a lot of Stachybotrys, that makes me worry sometimes because with how fickle they are, that could mean there's even more than that.
That house is loaded.
That could be loaded.
Could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it could be you happen to pick the exact correct 3 foot by 3 foot section of air that all the Stacky were having a convention at one time, and you got them all right there.
A Stacky party. So worst case scenario, when you do catch something very toxic like Stachybotrys or Chaetomium, worst case scenario, you picked the worst spot of the house.
Right.
And so it doesn't bode well, meaning you probably didn't catch the worst spot in the house, and it's probably worse in other parts, meaning it's not good on your health. Well, we did a treatment that addressed the whole health of the home, that addressed the mold load on the home, all these pockets and factories of mold that you talked about in episode 1. And I just called him yesterday after we got the before test back saying, man, you had a lot of Stacky. Yeah. And he said, I got home that night, and where I'd normally expect to get headaches in my house, no headaches. Yeah. So I think, especially when you're dealing with Stacky, it probably is the mycotoxins that are causing these issues. And to your point, you address the mold issue. Right. And he did say he had to kind of air out the house because we did some stuff that kind of, caused some smell in there, and it was safe. But he said he aired out the house, and he said he was feeling good that night. So I think more times than not, if you're still suffering, I would not fall for the argument. Well, I took care of the mold. We just got to figure out how to get rid of these mycotoxins. I wouldn't fall for that. There's still mold in that home. Yeah, and that's even another angle on it is. I had a traditional treatment. They took care of it. So the mold's gone, so it must be mycotoxins. Right, yeah. And so I guess with what we're saying here is, no, it's probably, and this actually ducktails really well into what we're going to talk about today. Yes, perfect. If we planned it. As if we planned it, but we really didn't. No, we didn't. But really, there's still mold in the home. And so we are going to dive into this much more deeper. If we could put a topic to our podcast today, it would be the pitfalls and the downfalls of traditional mold remediation. Yeah. Now, this as a disclaimer, this is not to bash on anything. In any way. For sure. We're all doing the best we can in the mold remediation world to help everyone, and there's a lot of benefits to the traditional mold remediation. And there are some really, really good companies out there. Yeah, and there's great companies, and they do good things, and But you have to be really careful. I can't tell you how many times I do a treatment where the customer has had a traditional treatment and they're still feeling sick and they're still having symptoms, and then we come in and we have to do kind of a full home treatment to take care of the issue.
Yeah. So we could dive into the steps they go through.
Yeah, let's dive into because I think I don't think the average person knows what is a traditional mold remediation treatment look like, and that'll kind of tell us what the downfalls are. Well,
first of all, I would guess most of their work is they're responding to a flood, right, or a leak or something. The customer has got water in their basement or water somewhere.
And you're traditional mold remediation certified. You're a certified contractor, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I am. I've been fully trained on how to duct tape plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As have I. Yeah. It's a rigorous certification process in the U.S.
Yes, it is. So anyway, they'll respond to a flood, and so what they will typically do is say, okay, we got to get the water stopped first, obviously.
Yeah.
And then we got to get this dried out. And so they'll bring in fans to start to dry things out. They may or may not cordon off that area with plastic, contain that area. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
During the dry out phase?
While they're blowing fans on it to dry it out.
What determines whether they would or wouldn't?
I've never seen any rhyme or reason. I think some companies just maybe know that they should, and some don't think it's that important. I think there's a danger in not containing it with fans, in that you're going to spread spores throughout the house even more than what they already are.
Yeah.
So,
because I've heard, they say it takes 24 to 48 hours, the EPA does, before a mold, still water can start mold growth. And so, unless you jump on it that second,
it's gonna be tough. Yeah.
If you waited a day or so, that fan is just blowing stuff around.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think cordoning off, better safe than sorry.
Better safe than sorry. So that's what they'll do. They'll use duct tape and thick plastic and cordon off that entire area. Sometimes they even make I can't remember what they called. I spent a week in Texas in a class learning how to do this, and I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, an entryway to go into the cordoned off area. And so once they get that done, at that point, assuming things are dried out, they'll start to tear out, right? They will tear out anything they think was wet or has mold on it. And I always thought it was funny that it's 2020 and we're still teaching guys how to make sure they put it in a bag and use the twisty tie so that those spores can't get out. I think that's funny.
It's an important part of
in this day and age. Yeah. So anyway, you'll double bag the stuff, whatever you're taking out. Say you're taking out some sheetrock, you're gonna double bag that and then twisty tie it. They don't specify how many times you should twisty it.
There's no regulation on that.
No regulations at all.
Okay.
Which I think is just the wild, wild west. We don't know how many times they're twisting. Anyway, they twisty it, and then they're going to drag it through the house and take it out to their truck and throw it away. At that point, they've probably got the fans turned off. They're going to start to rebuild everything. They may or may not spray something into... So, say we're using as an example a basement wall. They've torn out the sheetrock where it was wet or showed mold, or any kind of damage. You may or may not have mold on those 2x4s. I about guarantee you do, but they may or may not spray something in there. A lot of times they spray stuff that's not great for your health as well.
So they'll cut out the sheetrock, but they typically won't cut out the 2x4s.
No. Yeah, right.
So to address the mold that may or may not be on there, they'll use some sprays.
Yeah, they'll use sometimes toxic, sometimes not great stuff at all. I've talked to a number of healthcare practitioners that have told me, look, I'm afraid to call a traditional mold guy because the stuff they use is worse on my patient than the mold in the first place. So, they may or may not use some pretty nasty stuff to kill it. In fact, we should jump into this right away. Anybody that tells you that they're going to spray bleach on those 2x4s, run away from those guys. Bleach is the worst thing in the world. Everybody knows you don't use bleach for mold remediation.
It doesn't And especially on something like a 2x4 that's porous, bleach does not do well with porous surfaces. It's not approved for that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a misnomer. I still go into, I can't tell you how many homes I go into where people say bleach.
Well, I grew up thinking, well, just bleach it, and it'll kill it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it definitely makes it look like you killed it.
Yeah, you feel great. Yeah.
It's almost like it, like you said, it's almost like it bleaches it.
It's a lot like it bleaches it.
You can't really see it after you do it, which is why I think, there's that, why people think, oh yeah, bleach will take care of it. Yeah. But
and then they always say, I killed it, but it grew back.
Yeah.
I would submit that it was never dead if it grew back.
Well, even the best, professional industrial grade mold stain removers, they only certify, on their labeling it says will remove mold stain for up to 30 days or something.
It could control mold. I don't know what the control word means, but some of them say that controls mold. Yeah. Yeah,
because a lot of them remove the stain, but you've got to use other methods and ways to get rid of the actual
to truly
mold
sterilize.
Yeah, truly kill
a place. Yeah. So anyway, to take it a little bit farther, so they'll start to rebuild everything. They leave the containment up, right? Mm-hmm. While they're rebuilding everything, they may or may not run air scrubbers, but at the conclusion of the rebuild, they will run air scrubbers for sometimes 2-3 days. Mm-hmm. The idea is that any contaminants that would have escaped during the twisty tie process or during the tear out process, we want to make sure we catch those in our air scrubber, right?
Well, and may I add, when you spray mold, like if they're going to spray 2x4s, the reason that's so discouraged, it's kind of what we've talked about earlier. Anytime you aggravate mold, it's going to spore out.
Right.
If you spray mold, you may, even if you use a nice product that kills mold, you might get, may even get like 500,000 of them.
Oh, yeah. It's
and then miss 400 million of them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how many mold spores can be encompassed in a very small space, right? So spraying it definitely aggravates things.
Yes.
And it'll spread it out into that containment, right?
Yep. So they'll run the air scrubbers for 3 or 4 days. I'll tell you a funny story. I was down in Texas taking a class to become a Texas mold contractor. Week-long class.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of funny stories from that week. But on Thursday of that week, and mind you, I was in a class with about 25 other guys, all from traditional mold remediation world, right? So when I told them who I was, it was kind of like, we don't like this guy at all. But we started to kind of get to be pretty good friends by the end of the week.
Yeah.
And I would kind of harass them a little bit, but we spent an entire day learning how to cordon off an area and we did a mock tear out, a mock rebuild with everything still cordoned off. Mm-hmm. Then we did a mock air scrubber with everything cordoned off still. Mm-hmm. And then the instructor says, okay, at this point, this may be 2 or 3 days that you scrub the air. Now we go in and test to make sure we did our job. And I just because I am who I am, kind of a smart aleck, I said, well, don't we want to take down the plastic before we test? And it was almost like 4 or 5 guys all at the same time. No, you can't, Mike. And I said, why? Why can't we do that? They said it won't pass. And I said to them, exactly. That's what I've been trying to show you guys all week, during breaks and whatever. But they do not address the health of the home. Yeah. They are just spot treating that area. And so that's why a lot of times it's in my mind to test an area that is cordoned off with plastic, has been scrubbed for 3 days, take a test, the test comes back clean, and to tell that customer your house is safe, that to me is disingenuous. Yeah. You don't know if the house is safe or not.
Yeah. Yeah, because that air scrubber, I mean, it's arguable that if you had active mold growth within a contained space and just scrubbed it for 3 days and then took a test right at that 3-day mark, you'd have a clean test every time. Yeah. Not because the mold itself was even resolved.
Right.
But because...
You're just actively scrubbing it.
You're just scrubbing the air. I mean, just like an air purifier. If you keep that going really good, you'll have pure air until you turn it off.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it helps them. Well, 2 things help them. one is we know that the air quality tests are really flaky,
Yeah.
and so that plays in their advantage most of the time.
Mhm.
On those after tests, they can say, "Yep, we passed. Everything's good." I know the traditional guys I know, one of their bigger nightmares is, okay, sometimes it doesn't pass.
Yeah.
And then what do you do now? Do we tear it back into the wall, or what on earth do we do?
Yeah.
So we get into more of that in a second. But,
Okay.
yeah, so I lost my train of thought. I was talking about the traditional guys just when they cord it off. I don't know. It'll come back to me.
Okay. Well, maybe this won't spark a thought, but maybe while you're answering this question, it'll come back to you.
Okay.
So, you cordon off. I like your story, by the way, in Texas.
Yeah, good story.
They don't want you to test outside of the containment,
No, it won't pass, Jeremy.
which tells me that, which is good. It tells me that there's a basic understanding of how mold works. It spores out, though the mold, visible mold, or the problem area is in this section. I know that other sections of the house are affected,
Right.
and it almost acknowledges that I didn't address those at the same time.
It kind of does, yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, and this is an example. I can't remember if I've shared this, but I love this example you gave to me once. You actually, yeah, I think you used it in this context, but you used the example of bacon. Do you remember this example?
I do, yeah.
And maybe you could share it actually, because I think this is instructive on how really quickly and how pervasive a mold spore can be within seconds.
Yeah, and so I think as a country, we all, for the most part, think that if I have mold in my home, it's just where I can see it.
Yeah.
Right? It's just where it's manifesting itself. There's so much mold built up in that spot. That's my problem. And very few people realize that, no, that's probably a symptom of a much bigger problem. You have an overall mold, could we say load?
We could.
An overall
Yeah, we
mold
have
load
many times.
problem in the house. And so to illustrate how quickly mold spores can travel throughout the air, I tell people all the time, okay, do me a favor. Start cooking bacon in your kitchen. Tell me how fast you smell that at the far end of the house. It's within seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm sure bacon grease is a lot heavier particle than a mold spore.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, your air moves crazy fast, and it takes those spores throughout the whole house. Those spores will keep dancing around, bouncing off things until they find moisture, then they're off and going.
Yeah. I don't know why I never thought of this, but what makes, when you smell anything, really, what you're really smelling is teeny little particles in the air.
Yeah.
Right? That's what a smell is.
A little VOC in there, yeah.
A little VOC.
Yeah.
So, arguably, when you're on the other side of the house, your mom's cooking bacon downstairs or wherever, you're just smelling little bits of bacon within just a few, seconds or even minutes, of her cooking that. Similar. As soon as mold spores out, the problem is you can't smell many mold spores.
Yeah, and especially if it's just still in just the spore form floating around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to really build up.
Yeah.
To start to smell a problem.
Yeah. And so, especially, we think of seconds, but think of these mold problems that maybe have been going for days, weeks, sometimes years. I mean, I can't tell you. I just had a house yesterday that a leak had been going on for years. And so I imagine there's just mold spores everywhere in that house after
Absolutely.
2 years.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about vents. I'm positive their venting system is just chock full of spores. And unfortunately, you can't smell mold spores, most of them, many of them. That would be really, if we all smell a really strong smell every time a mold spore floated by, we would be much more sensitive to the mold load of our home.
Uh-huh.
So, I think that's a good example in really showing how important it is, again, just that cordoning off that area and treating that mold is a big part of things. But
it is. And honestly, there are companies that are amazing at what they do.
Yeah.
Paul Davis, for example, is a great company.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. I don't think I've ever talked to anyone that has had a bad experience with Paul Davis.
Yeah.
Other mold remediators are not so great, but they're all trying to do what they've been taught.
Yeah.
And I think they all have good intentions of fixing the mold problems. They lack the technology of being able to address the health of the entire home.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
So what, we described the steps of traditional remediation and kind of in that we've seen some of the downfalls. Do you see any other shortcomings of the way they approach the remediation?
It's just a lack of understanding of what's going on in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even I'll tell you a funny story is just to illustrate how poorly this entire problem is understood nationwide. I was at a industrial hygienist conference, and they had breakout classes. We actually had a booth in the conference, and they had breakout classes, and one of the classes was this so-called expert on mold remediation, and the class was mold remediation in a construction site, right? So he spent 20 minutes up on stage, had overheads, all types of stuff. He was giving you examples of what do you do if you're framing a home and all of a sudden all the studs in the framing have mold on them. Now remember, this is a hygienist conference, right? Indoor air hygienist conference. He showed overhead after overhead of the mixture you should use for bleach to go ahead and spray bleach. And I'm looking around at the other people in the class, and I actually said to a lady next to me, "Is this really happening?" And she says, "I know, I can't believe it." So I went up to him after, and I said, "Can you help me understand something?" And he was pretty gruff and a little short, older guy. And I don't know why I had to say short. Or older, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, give you a good visual. Short, older guy.
Yeah.
And I said, help me understand why you're teaching to use bleach, where everybody that even kind of understands mold knows that bleach is not the answer for mold remediation. And he said, who are you? And I said, I'm Mike. And I told him the company I was from. And he's like, oh, yeah, I probably haven't said a lot of good things about you guys. And I said, well, probably you haven't, but I don't think you understand what we do. But I said, help me understand why you're still teaching to use bleach, because we know it doesn't work. And he kind of turned away and started walking away, and he turned around and he said, send me the data. If you got data, send me the data. So it was funny because we spent the rest of that afternoon at the conference just shooting him link after link after link of bleach does not kill mold. Bleach does not, studies show bleach does not kill mold.
Yeah.
So he probably wasn't very happy with me by the end of the day, but that just gives you an idea of how just the entire country just does not understand the dynamics of mold and how to take care of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. You talked about, So I've worked with bleach, in my work, in my mold remediation work. I try to minimize any use of it, and I never use it to kill mold.
Right.
I've used it for visual appeal, and in fact, I just recently used a bleach-based product in a crawl space where no one's ever going to be breathing, and I felt good about that. But man, I'll tell you what, I'm wearing a respirator, I'm wearing the suit, and it's still. Actually, not as much this week, but I did a similar type thing in an attic a month ago. And I don't know if I didn't have my respirator sealed, but by the end of that job, I was feeling weird.
Yeah.
I was feeling queasy.
It's not good stuff, yeah.
Breathing, and I couldn't have been breathing in that much with my heavy-duty respirator, but that was the moment when I thought, we should not be using this stuff.
This is not great stuff.
This is not good stuff. Especially, we shouldn't make a regular practice of bleach. We all know bleach. When you aerosolize bleach, when you put it in the air too, especially, and it becomes something you're breathing in. Yeah. Not just the fumes from you rubbing it on a counter, but when you aerosolize it, man, that started to make me feel really weird inside.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
And that's that's not even the worst of what some remediators might choose to use.
There's some
to kill mold.
Just horrendous stuff out there. Yeah. In fact, we had a licensee from our company in our office yesterday, and he was telling us that they had tried one of these products that are specifically made to control the mold. And he said he just dripped a little bit on his hand, and by the next morning his hand had swollen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He said, I figured out really quick we should not be using this stuff. This is not good stuff. So, you got to be careful with what you use. Really, really careful. You can make a home that's really unhealthy from the mold become a home that's really unhealthy from the mold and the stuff they added to it. Yeah,
because a lot of that stuff doesn't break down easily, and you wore the right PPE when you applied it, but some of that stuff hangs around for a long time.
Yeah, it leaves a residue on the surface, and that residue may continue to off-gas for years.
Yeah, for years, and affect your release VOCs, which you were trying to get rid of with the mycotoxins. Can you address, in this vein, household products, that maybe a lot of people try to solve their mold problems by going to Home Depot.
Yeah.
Are those good or bad, or any thoughts there?
It's that was remember when I said I lost my train of thought?
Yeah.
That's what I was going to remember, or I was going to tell you, is that and now I just lost it again. We're going to have to edit this out.
No, it's real.
It's real.
So, Home Depot.
Yeah, Home Depot and the products they use. It'll come back to me. Anyway, there are a number of products you can get, like a Home Depot or Lowe's or the hardware store, that are pretty effective at bleaching out the mold.
Yeah.
Right. There's even a product called Concrobium that I think it's a decent product. It's relatively safe, but again, whenever you use products like that, you're addressing just one spot in the house.
Yeah.
You're not addressing the whole. You can't dip your whole home in a bucket of that stuff.
Yeah.
And nor can you spray that stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
In your home. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's again, a lot of times if it's for aesthetics, the stuff you can get at a store is fine.
Yeah.
But if you're sick from the mold, it came back to me again. Okay,
hurry.
This is good.
Hurry.
Yeah, hurry. So I was talking about traditional mold remediators benefit from cassettes not being great.
Yeah.
They also benefit from only about 25% of the population get really, really sick from mold.
Oh, yeah.
So your odds are pretty good that somebody may not be sick at all and you left mold behind, or it may be only one person's and they'll never figure that out because everybody else in the house is fine.
Yeah.
So they benefit from those odds as well. Yeah. Boy, I'm glad I brought that all back together.
Well, we needed that.
Yeah.
To your Concrobium thought, I was at a guy's house in not about a half hour away from here, and he had his house fogged with Concrobium.
Oh, really? And
so, as we talked about ways to address his mold situation, he's like, can you? Are you gonna? Is this Concrobium you're gonna put all over my house? He was asking me as we talked about things, and I was like, no. He said Concrobium left a film on everything in his whole house.
Yeah, it will.
And he had to wipe it off.
Yeah, I think it's more of a salt.
Yeah.
I think it's relatively safe, but
it is safe, but it leaves something behind that you have to take care of. Well, that's good, because I think people go to Home Depot and they see some of these things and they think, oh, it is for mold, and I can take care of my mold problem with this. But then if you're lacking a lot of the background knowledge, you might think, I spray it on this patch of mold and I'm good.
Right.
And so I think you have to be careful. I agree. I buy stuff from Home Depot sometimes to remove stains or do other things, but I do it very much in the context of this is not addressing the mold issue in the home. It's maybe just
aesthetics.
Aesthetics and making it look nicer and better. So I think we've packed a good half hour's worth of podcast.
We've realized that Mike cannot hold a train of thought more than about 30 seconds. So it's been good for everyone. Yeah.
No, I think this is good. I would say the majority of the population doesn't even know what a traditional mold remediation looks like. So I think it was helpful. Yeah. Get a picture of what it's going to look like, if a traditional company comes in, and even for a customer, maybe what things to ask your remediator come out of that. Like, okay, the mold's here, but
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a bad idea to inquire about, could the rest of my home be of concern, and keep that in mind.
Yeah, I did. There was a horror story years ago that it was a young couple in Bountiful, Utah, and they had hired a traditional mold remediator, and they came in and tore out a wall, did the whole twisty tie thing, and rebuilt the wall, took a test showed still high levels of mold within the containment area.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, I guess we're going to have to tear it out and do it again. So they tore it out and did it again.
Tore out the same thing
same
they
wall,
had just put
same
in?
exact wall.
Their own wall that they put in?
Yeah, same exact wall. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I think they sprayed something in it this time and put it all back together, took a test. Nope, still have mold, right?
Oh, wow.
So then they talked the customer into saying, well, it's got to be down the line somewhere from the containment area. And so they started tearing out more walls in the basement. But then they started tearing out part of the roof or the ceiling of the basement.
Mm.
And by then, it had gone from like a $4,000 job to about a $22,000 job.
Mm.
And their insurance wasn't paying for it, and they were just at their wit's end, upset with this. They thought they're going to have to sell the house. They don't know how they can sell the house because it's got mold. And anyway, they got a hold of us, and we were able to go take care of it pretty easily. But I explained to her the whole concept of, look, the whole house has mold. If you have visible mold anywhere, you're going to have a mold load in the home. And depending on how sensitive you are, and depending on how long that home has been able to build upon that mold load, those are the variables. But you've got mold throughout the home, and it's got to be taken care of.
Yeah. Do you think the reason the test was failing within the containment, do you think it's because those spores, because even they used an air scrubber, I assume.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they used an air scrubber, but...
Do you think it was in the carpets and the furniture and things?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be. Yeah. I mean, even an air scrubber is not going to be perfect.
Yeah, sometimes they can't suck it up as fast as it's coming out of the mold or wherever. Interesting. Well, we have many more tales of mold treatments to come.
We have a lot of tales.
Look forward to those. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you guys learned something. And I should announce, we have a guest presenter. I've talked to a very famous doctor.
A friend of the company's.
Dr. Pompa, if you want to look him up and anticipate that. But he we'll introduce him in the next podcast. But he started his journey getting sick with mold. Yeah. Then he taught himself how to get well. And now he trains doctors. Mm-hmm. He practiced for years, and now he trains doctors on how to help people with mold illness. And we've become friends with him over the last few months. We've treated some of his mold concerns in his own personal home. Mm-hmm. And he's a great guy, and I'm excited to have him on the show.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And I want to learn. I'm excited to learn from him, from the health side of things. He's going to share some stuff on how to heal from mycotoxins and from mold toxicity and things like that. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
He's great.
So until then, we will talk to you guys later.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
I think that was really good, Jared.
Yeah?
I think you did real good. I just had a little space cadet moment.
No, I don't think that matters at all, Mike.
I don't think it did.
I think it's good.
Do you?